You were never meant to play alone, not even in games designed to be single player. Grab your favorite mug, and let's talk about that. I used to be somebody who didn't understand why you would pay money for a game that you would spend a couple of hours on and then maybe never play again. I also used to be someone who strictly played single-player games. And even now that I venture into co-op games, I still don't really ever play online multiplayer games. So then why would I say that gaming is an experience that was and is something that's not meant to be done alone? Well, Fishbowl isn't a short game, and it is definitely not a multiplayer game. It is the game that got me thinking about this topic. And it did so by centering on isolation and grief. Playing as an early 20s girl named Alo, who is fresh into her first big girl job, and honestly, it kind of seems like a dream job, as well as starting a new adventure in a new city. You would think maybe that her story is one about achieving the dream life. But just a month after the passing of her grandma, Alo feels listless and apathetic. A new job and a new city should be exciting, but closing out on her first week of this new job finds Alo face to face with a pandemic and a lockdown. The grief that she goes through is something that I think all of us can relate to at some point in our lives. It is something that especially hits home for me right now, as my family has gone through a recent loss this year. And the loss of close relationships is always hard, especially when it is this big and this fresh. It is easy to feel like no one can understand the pain that you're feeling. And add to that the fact that Alo is faced with a physical isolation that can lead despair to grow. But where does this take us, and why does it connect to gaming being an experience that's meant to be shared? Feeling alone in life is something that I think a lot of people experience, and being alone is not inherently bad. There are plenty of things that I do for myself that I don't do with other people, like have tea. At the start of my time with Alo, something like cooking was so energy draining it was impossible for her to do. Part of that is narrative, but part of it showcases how self-care can be really hard to do in times of extreme grief and sadness. Because grief, sadness, depression, it can touch the things that we love and make them impossible to do. And games are such a unique form of media because they are designed to be interacted with. They are so physically engaging that, in my opinion, it creates a more impactful story. It just is something unlike reading a book or watching a show. And I have always been someone who is strongly impacted by the stories in games, and part of that is because my actions, my literal movements in the real world, are what direct the story. I move to choose the dialogue option. I choose when and if Alo drinks water or does her laundry. That kind of engagement puts me so fully in the shoes of the character that I am playing as that it engages my emotional reactions within the story as well. It feels similar to me as the way that being captivated by the story a friend is telling you, when you kind of start feeling angry on their behalf. One of the things that I regularly did while I played Fishbowl was make sure that Alo was investing in things that brought her joy and comfort. I stopped binge watching shows or scrolling on social media with her when I realized how negatively it consistently impacted her mood. But that deviated when it came to making the choice to have her write poetry. I would choose to have her write her poetry at every opportunity because it was something that was life-giving to her, and writing in general is always a great way to process emotions and feelings and thoughts. And even though the writing always brought Alo's mood down, it was something that I saw as important for her to do. And it was something that broke my heart every time she scratched it up and threw it away. And it didn't break my heart because of the action that she was doing of throwing away her words, but because of the fact that she was not giving herself the space to understand what her emotions were telling her through her words. She wanted her poetry to be a source of happiness and joy again, and it just was not there. It makes me think of the movie Inside Out, where joy doesn't give space to sadness, but sadness is an emotion that we need. And the emotional experience is part of what I consider why gaming is not meant to be done alone. Not fully. Fishbowl showcases how healing is anything but linear. Taking care of Alo's daily needs, making sure she gets to enjoy her cup of coffee and take a refreshing shower, is really important for helping her process. It puts her in a good headspace, but there is an aspect that she needs that is just as important as having her physical needs met. Nothing supports Alo more than her community, her family, her friends, even her landlady and coworkers. When Alo doubts herself, her friends remind her of the reasons why they admire her, why they love her. When she feels so lost in her pain and she's feeling like no one could possibly understand, her landlady shares her own experiences with loss. And when she feels helpless and stuck in despair, she sits in the warmth of those who love her and who she loves. And that kind of leads to her finding that sometimes helping other people is a way that you can help yourself. Video games can't truly be enjoyed alone because any game that makes an impact is a game that demands to be shared. Making this video happened because Fishbowl impacted me so much that I can do nothing but talk about it. Maybe it's because my partner and I have gone through a recent loss. And maybe it's because Alo reflects so many people that I know in my life through the conversations that she has in her community. But regardless, I have to talk about it. We weren't meant to play alone, because when anything or one is important to us, we are meant to find community within that. I really love Ed Sheeran, and one of his songs called Visiting Hours has a lyric that I feel like is the best example of this, which is, "And I will close the door, but I will open up my heart, and everyone I love will know exactly who you are." When I love something, I will always talk about it. Gaming alone is nice. It's still a wonderful experience, but building community around things that we experience, sharing it with other people, that is, I think, the main purpose of all media, is to share stories that are unlike what we experience in our day-to-day, or to show us that we're not alone in the things that we experience. Gaming, honestly, is a tool in building a community. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on your experience with gaming, if you are someone who has friends that game a lot too, or if you seek community around games and other areas like Discord and stuff. I'd just love to hear your thoughts. And if you want another video with a game that I find to be super impactful, then why don't you check out this video right here. And with that, save your games, water your plants, and I will see you next time.